Welcome everyone to the URA session 2. So you want to move into a storefront. We did have the first session on July 28th. Josette Fitzgibbons was the narrator of that basically. And I just wanted people to know that you didn't have to be in the first one to be in this second webinar. And we've position this where it advances as we move along of the things that need to be considered for someone looking to move into a storefront for the first time, perhaps sign a lease, and have put together a lineup of speakers for us to learn from that can help us think and wrap our head around what do we need to have together, what do we need to think about if we're are an entrepreneur and a startup business and we want to enter a commercial space for the first time. Perhaps we had a food truck, we've been working out of our home, our maker space of some sort, and now we want to move into a storefront, a brick and mortar. And these are the topics that we're going to cover. And also, you do not, most of our programs at the URA, as you know, all of our programs, the way they're funded and the way that we apply staff to them, have to be in the city of Pittsburgh for the funding and participation in many of our programs. But what we're talking about today far reaches beyond the borders of any boundary, and it's basically wisdom that anyone would need anywhere that is thinking of starting a business, an entrepreneur that's looking to move to getting into a lease with a storefront. So keep that in mind. We can have further discussions about resources that are in any townships outside of that are in Allegheny County and beyond the city of Pittsburgh. But the programs we'll be talking about that are URA funded and staffed are the business has to be located within the city of Pittsburgh. So with that said, let me and just to go over who we've got here, our first speaker is going to be, well, it'll be Ivan and Rachel, but I've got Ivan's information up here. Ivan Gil Silva of Mi Empanada, and you can see his email there. Oscar will probably put those in the chat. And there, it'll be Mi Empanada talking a little bit about a testimonial and his participation with URA, commercial lending, starting up a company, going through funding rounds, what he needed to get into his first brick and mortar and his experience perhaps with the health department and PLI and anything he wishes to share for entrepreneurs looking to follow the success and in the footsteps of getting into their first space and having a successful business. Lori Moran of Valley Money is going to talk about commercial real estate and a lease and what it means to get a commercial lease, things that you need to think about. Bill Sperry, he's a supervisor at PLI, permits, licensing, and inspections with the city of Pittsburgh. Bill and I worked together at a certain point, both for PLI, going through testing together with codes, and he is a supervisor there, and he's going to give us an overview of some things to think about as it relates to permitting and working with One Stop PGH as you submit drawings and fill out your permit applications. And then Aaron Burden of Allegheny County Health Department, he's going to talk to us about submitting plans and things that need to be considered and the basic requirements if someone were to open a food service space and need to get inspected by Allegheny County Health Department and what requirements are going to be needed there. And some of our presenters will present their own material, and they'll share the screen. And I believe Aaron is one of those for sure. Carly Turkley, she works for Urban Redevelopment Authority. She's a senior loan officer, I believe, or lending officer, loan officer, I think. I don't know the exact title. But Carly is going to talk about URA programs, commercial lending, perhaps the documents and the things you need to get together for a bank and things to consider when you're raising money in your capital and programs at the URA that can help you. So our first speaker is going to be Gil and Rachel. I'm not sure how you guys are going to work together, but just feel free. And I'm going to try to keep it to about 15 minutes, give or take, for each presenter. So Ivan, if you would, I'll advance the screen to the.
Perfect. I can see that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hear you very well.
Perfect. Excellent. Okay. Well, I have a couple of notes of my own. If I miss anything, Rachel will fill in on some things. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about. We're going to try to condense it into 15 minutes. And some of these bullet points go back and forth. Some things I might touch back onto it as we go. So starting a company or a business of any kind is very difficult. Obviously, you have to have an idea. You have to have a product that you're trying to sell. And you really have to hone in on what you're going to be selling. So that goes into concept. But in that concept, obviously, we have to go into navigating how we're going to get from point A to point B, which is an idea on a napkin for some people, or a dream to, in this case, we're going all the way to a brick and mortar. And we're going to discuss the steps that we took and the challenges that we found in getting to that point. Obviously, concept's the most important part about it. What are you doing? What are you selling? In our case, it was going to be empanadas, which became Argentinian food, but that didn't happen until we opened up the brick and mortar. So little bites as we went, we increased our menu, but we only had 2 empanadas to start off. That was basically the main concept. We were cooking from home and we were doing it for events, for our friends, really for parties. And it wasn't really a big idea until we kind of saw an avenue to making some side money. It wasn't really we never thought it was going to be as big as it got. But it was basically a seed that we planted and we kept watering it while we kept working our second jobs. Our second jobs did aid in it because we were in the creative industry. She designed graphic designs and worked with a printing company and embroidery, and I was doing event production. So all those things kind of collide when it comes to making events. And the food is one of those things between music, production, and branding sometimes. Some of the things that I had to come forward with at that moment was, hey, well, we're going to sell food. We're not going to go from these rinky-dink empanadas, we're going to say, to a brick and mortar. That's crazy. You can do your food truck, but that also seemed like quite the leap. So when you are encountered with this, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to deal with the health department. So what I did was to find people, because to be honest, when you find the information online, it's very dispersed between different departments, and even within the web pages that you go to, they can be very complicated to navigate, saying, I want this, I want that. So I would actually show up on, I think it would be 40th Street and Penn Ave, where the health department is located. And I would say, I would like to talk to someone. They were actually very nice, and I would get a person. I would sit down with that person and I would show them my drawings and my menus. We had a lot ready. Some people, they tell me, go in there with nothing. They sit down and say, hey, I want to be a restaurateur. In that case, well, someone will tell them, hey, this is a booklet from the health department. Read these things, follow up with me, and get these permits, or depending what you're trying to do. In our case, we were very well prepared with the menu, and I had already read up on the health department and also forums online. It's very universal. You're selling food in the United States, you're going to deal with a lot of the same things. But either you're selling food from a cart in a corner, or you're trying to actually make it in the legal, real business. And it gets really complicated when you decide to play the actual legal game. When we had to take the first step at the health department, one thing that we had to do is choose what type of mobile food facility we're going to use. In our case, we ended up doing the transient catering, which is basically the lowest food preparation, let's say, certificate or license. Basically, it's a license to sell food. Obviously, I wasn't going to food truck. I didn't have a cart. I was popping up a tent with a table and an oven, and I had to make sure I had a thermometer. There's little small things that you might not think about that begin to come up that they're going to help you and assist you with. The other thing is that if you're going to be cooking food, not all of us are chefs, not all of us went to cooking school. And yes, we might cook at home and we have our fridge at home, but how you treat food in the commercial department is very different because you're feeding hundreds of people, sometimes thousands, and you could kill someone. So when it comes to the point of making food to the masses and not just your friends, now you really have to think of liabilities. So if you don't get a limited liability company, well, that's on you, but that's a very important step in deciding, hey, I have a business and I'm going to be protected. If something happens, they're not going to take my house. They're not going to take my car. That was the first and absolute thing that I did. And also register my name, which we came up with Mi Empanada. At that point, we started branding very early because we're in the business of doing it for other people. So the logos that you see today were the logos that we designed at the beginning from day one. We said, hey, we like this. We had a couple of them and we stuck with it. And we stuck with the name and we said, hey, we're going to be Mi Empanada. We only have 2 empanadas, but we have a food, we have a brand, and I'm going to get the permit to have a tent, transient catering license. That means I can cater events. That means I can go to a big event and I can be one of the many tents in it. But at that point, you go from being protected legally by having an LLC. And then the next step is, well, the health department says you have to have a license to sell food in the city of Pittsburgh, or even outside. Sometimes I think that when you go outside of the city of Pittsburgh, then you might have to talk to the health department local to that place. Sometimes they share laws in between each other. Sometimes they have either more relaxed laws or harder laws for you to deal with when you have to do an event outside of the city compared to inside of the city. The most important step that you're going to have to take at that point is to get ServSafe. You're going to have to get a certificate where you're going to take a class in figuring out that you are handling your food appropriately. And there's a lot to learn. A lot of it is common sense. But we had to sit through it. We both got ServSafe licensed. We have our license to sell the food. We had an LLC to prove that we have a company. And with that right there, that was it's basically the wheels to your car. You don't even have an engine really. It's just you pushing your own car.
Yeah, fundamental.
It's the absolute fundamental. A lot of people don't think about that. A lot of people go out there without that. And I think the people that do that don't make it as far because they do not put in front of them the stepping stones that they need to make it to the next level. So it's extremely important that you consider these things. And though they can be expensive to do if you pay someone else to do it, for you to do it, it's actually not that hard. And if you have time in your hands, it's only a couple $100 by the time you're done paying for all these things, and they will be forever or for a couple of years. You know, the certificates for ServSafe can be a couple of years, while the transient catering license is pretty much for good.
Or even
and
having an LLC.
Or even have an LLC. You have the LLC until you decide not to have it. So those are the fundamentals in your creation of a concept from napkin to something, not your storefront. We have next, demonstrating product or service. What exactly do you mean by demonstrating products or service? Did I just touch up on that in a sense? Would you say that I touched up on the demonstrating product or service? I'll keep expanding on that.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely. I was typing in the chat here briefly. You certainly did. Yeah, just keep moving along. This is wonderful, Ivan. Wonderful.
Okay, excellent. Because that's right. Some of these things are going to tie in together. I might be like skipping certain ones and expanding on other points. So I'm going to be going through the bullet points, but they might be converging in certain areas because it's obviously all part of the same thing. Let me see if I find some of these things. So at this point, we're not really looking for any funding. It's still a small idea. We're growing it. I think that we did this probably for the first year until
Like about two, honestly,
almost
like
2 years before we decided, hey, listen, so if someone gave me money, I'm going to use this. And that's what we consider working capital. I think a lot of people mistaking working capital and how they need to use it. It's called working capital. You need to grab that money and double it and double it. If you grab that money and use it to live, you're going to fail. We saved every penny that we made those 2 years. We didn't spend a single dime. We put it back. We bought one oven, actually a warmer, then an oven, then 2 ovens, then 2 tables, then 3 tables, then a tent, then another tent. And we kept expanding until we had 2 tents with 2 setups, and she was doing one and I was doing another one. At that point, we were bringing in a decent amount of money for what we were making. We were making anything. So anything was better than nothing. This is where we get to a point where we're like saying, hey, I have 2 years. Oh, and also let's not forget our POS system. We were using Square. It was very friendly. I had my phone. I had a little thing that went on it. I could swipe a credit card. I had an account. That money went into my account. I think for a minute because for a minute the money came to my personal account at the beginning. But when you get the LLC and you have, I think, $300 minimum, you open a business account. You're saying, hey, this money is not my money. This money is the business money. You got to treat the business wholly. I think a lot of people don't do that. They don't respect the division between their money, the business money, and how that business pays them, and how that business employs people, and how you employ people through your business. So it's very important to have these mindsets when you are opening a business, because you can get mixed up your role in the business and the role that the business plays for you and your employees and your future, including getting into the business plan. The money's going into the business account at this point. We're saving that money. I have charts that can show the business slowly growing. If you don't touch that money, if you reinvest that money, that curve is going to get higher faster, and it's going to look good on you at the time of making a business plan and trying to raise capital. So once we're getting to 2 years, I have numbers. I know how much my empanada cost. I know how much it costs me to make it. I know the amount of time it takes me to make it. I know where to find and source my materials. And I also know, if I multiply this, what can I make next year? What can I make next month? And also, obviously, it was very seasonal at that time. The winter time, we wouldn't make much money, but in the summer, we were working every Friday and Saturday. We're getting to business plan. We're getting to raising capital. So now it's the point where I'm saying, hey, I'm confident that if you give me money, I can do something bigger and better. I don't have the money. I only have enough money to keep the business running and growing. But if I'm putting my own money into it, I don't owe anyone money. You start generating, what's the name? We own the stuff that we have. So our assets.
Yeah.
So we start developing assets. They're not much, but there are assets. We don't owe any money to anyone. Once you get to raising capital, you're talking about working capital. You have to be very careful about how you use that money. This is where the mess begins. Everything was fine and dandy. We were doing very well. It looked very easy to do at that point. Another thing I forgot to mention is Commissary Kitchen. When you get your license from the city to say, I'm going to be selling food, they're like, where are you making your food? Well, I mean, we've been making it at home. Now I got to find a kitchen. Well, if I have to pay for a kitchen, the kitchen can be very expensive. So one of the hurdles that I think most entrepreneurs find and business owners find is finding a commissary, because the amount of money a business brings at that early stage is not enough to pay $400, $500, $600, $700 for a kitchen.
I mean, to add on, I don't want to, but we were both working full-time jobs as we were starting this business as well, to emphasize like how much little money we were making at this time. Everything was just being reinvested into the company. So we were still working full-time jobs. And then, yes, just moving on to the commissary, it was like, if you're like, I mean, I think we were approached because of our success story. Like, we really did pull ourselves up from the bootstraps and like make this work. But we're letting you know exactly how difficult it was to do that. And if we're gonna like open this up for more people to be able to do so, some things need
to change. So on adding up to that is, when we had to cook, now I had to find a commissary kitchen. We found one, but for the most part,
$1,000 a month.
That's some of them, $600,000, $700,000 a month. But I still cook from home, and I will tell you that about 90% of the people starting a business, and I'm not calling them out, and I'm being honest, they're cooking from home. There is no programs to help people access kitchens. If there are, I didn't see them, so it wasn't visible enough. We're lucky when we found the URA and they found us, but I think a lot of people, when I speak about, they don't know that there are grants out there. They don't know where to get loans. They don't know where to find the kitchen. And I think that can hamper a business from growing or to making that jump. So that is step number one for people trying to open up a business, is understanding how to get a commissary or find the resources to get one, because otherwise, and for the city who is overseeing this to understand that they're not going to listen to you, because they're just not going to be able to do it. So this is the biggest wall, and it's the first wall. The first wall that you're going to encounter is Commissary Kitchen.
Ivan, can we use that Commissary Kitchen as a segue for a few more moments here, and then take that from the Commissary Kitchen as you began to think about your space and the lease and build out, and any permitting from there to where you are today, and see if we can't do that in about 3 or 4 minutes. You think?
Yes. No. So this is the hard part now, and now we get to the Commissary Kitchen. So now you're saying, hey, I got the money. I got someone that's going to give me the money. It's your first restaurant. You're not a construction person. Now enters the permit department. You didn't even think about the permit department. You were dealing with the health departments first. So now you're with the permit department. And the permit department is also divided between, as we're going to see later, you have mechanicals, you have your plumbing, you have your electrical, and you might have more than that. I dealt with those 3, which is my water, my electric, and mechanicals, general construction. If you don't have the money, you're going to try to do as much as you can yourself, but you have to hire the licensed person to do it. Someone has to put their name on to go to the permitting department, get those permits and start building. Maybe you can help that guy a little bit to save on costs, but at the end of the day, that's where the money starts going away real fast. Finding someone to do it right, and that you don't mess up your drawings. We had a problem there. We got the money, we got the place, and then we try to work, and then it's like permit, 30 days, this is wrong. Another 30 days, this is wrong. Another 30 days, I can't get anyone in there. And now my money's like, 3 months went by, you got to start paying your loan. Well, I didn't use it yet, and I have to live. So now you start cannibalizing your own loan. Your permits are being delayed. The cost of your construction starts going up and up. And we were expecting to spend something like $50,000. We spent $150,000. A year later, we're opening up, and we learned a very serious lesson there. And the one thing that I'm going to say that was really difficult is that those departments don't speak to each other
At all. It's just like the biggest headache. And we had to use the URA microloan at the end because of the delays that we experienced, because of all the cannibalism of our loan. Like, we were living off of the loan, and they just took so long that it almost prevented us from opening.
So at this point, you start really feeling the nightmare that it is to open a business. This is where people quit. This is where people lose all their money. This is where people just throw down the towel, because it's actually really impossible. The people that have money throw money at it. The people that have money hire a guy to do that. He goes to the city permitting, and he speaks with everyone, and he gets everything together, and he gets them to give it to them faster. If you don't show up, they're going to put you in a little list, and you're just going to wait there, and slowly until they get to you, they're going to get to you. Otherwise, you're sitting there wasting money, losing money. You can't open. However, we pushed. I would show up at the department. I would talk to someone. I would ask them why. I had a ventless hood system. That doesn't really require mechanicals. It's a system that just rolls in. But because, the bureaucracy and the technicalities, it gets really difficult. I had to find a guy who's an HVAC guy to sign a paper. He never did anything. Go to the city of Pittsburgh, tell him that I had a ventless hood and that it was ventless, even though I wrote it on it. And at that point, I had to go 3 times to fight this. Like, listen, this is a ventless hood system. It's its own unit. We're not building anything. We don't need any mechanicals. Someone still had to walk in and inspect it, to look at it, right? It's okay, so that we can get moving on. The electric and the plumbing, that was taken care of by the plumbers and the electrician. At the end, once those things are done, someone comes around and makes sure that everything's okay, and they give you your occupancy. However, as she said, if it wasn't for the URA, if it wasn't for Bridgeway Capital being there for us, I don't think that we would have made it. Those resources are so important for small businesses, and they don't know that they're out there. They just don't know. I think that the URA and these programs need to make more noise in actually scouting out small businesses worthy of giving help to. Permitting, we touched on. Lease, buy, and build out. That's another thing. When you're gonna lease or buy, and what you're gonna do with your build out, make sure that you study as much as you can. There are resources on YouTube Buying is great because you own the building. Leasing really sucks. Landlords are really tough. Commercial leasing is the worst. They're going to give you a little thing and say, this is okay.
I mean, if we're gonna, sorry. I didn't mean to-
It's okay. And then they're going to give you at least this big that you can barely read with a lot of caveats. And once something happens on your building, it's on you. And to kind of close out my conversation on this is the rules are there for a reason. We went into Lawrenceville. There are gas pipes from 1880. Okay, there's things such as one phase, two phase. We have to get a new transformer. We do everything electric. Things are very particular to our particular model and business. You don't want to take the risk of cutting corners when it comes to that, because when you're running commercial stuff, believe it, it's going to happen to you. It took me a while to get insurance, but we got it. And let me tell you something, I don't regret it.
I just wanted to touch on if there's something that we could help other small businesses too in regards to leasing, especially within the city of Pittsburgh. Most of these people that own the buildings that are going to be leasing to us, like, you know, I mean, for instance, we rent from people that own properties nationally. Their headquarters are in New York City. They don't look at the building that they come into. So, I mean, if there are other entrepreneurs that are looking to buy, like, it's really important that you understand what kind of building you're walking into, because for the most part, when you're leasing, I mean, even when you buy, all of those costs are on you. And it was something that was like kind of a big shock for us too, especially, you know, renting. We're very small. So when something goes awry, it's
You want to do 1 minute of marketing, a little bit of what you think about social media and presentation?
do I have the time?
1 minute.
I'm going to give it to you.
Okay, if you want, yeah, that's fine. One thing I was gonna say that I would advise as well, I mean, we touched on everything else, but as far as like branding, it kind of even, to me, this goes into the concept of your business. It's something that I think should be really important. If that's something like, if that could be a division, maybe that the URA or something like that would offer. Just building a brand is huge for your business. You can't just go out anymore, especially in the age of social media, just digital creative content, anything like that now. That is what we are looking at all the time. So if you're going to have a successful business, I really just can't preach it enough. Yeah, having decent photos, social media, just all of that. I just want to
paying for advertisement, you have to look good. It's worth paying for a professional to do it. Your money's gonna come back tenfold. Do it right. Your phone is great if you know what you're doing. If you don't, leave it to the professionals. There's a lot of young people out there that can run your TikTok, your Instagram, your Facebook. They'll take photos for you. Otherwise, it's gonna be one of those flip phone pictures.
It's a huge part of our success, in all honesty, because before we were even able to get our storefront, we were advertising on Instagram and we looked a lot bigger than we were.
Yes.
And we were able to get catering orders just through that. So I just wanted to touch on that. It was at the bottom, but honestly, I feel like it should be with the concept.
True.
Rachel and Ivan, this is wonderful. I so appreciate a real hard-hitting entrepreneur telling us the real challenges that they face and how they found their success and what was important to them. And you know, the points you bring up are something we all should be aware of is in city government and collaborating together with our partners in the city of how to minimize some of the bureaucracy and how to collaborate with one another. As you can see here, we've got Allegheny County Health Department collaborating with us, Pittsburgh License and Inspections, and we're trying to make at the URA small businesses successful. So we're trying to help concierges navigate these departments in the city and help people get the resources they need and the information. So you were fortunate to be working with the URA with some of the programs, and you got some of the contacts, and really appreciate you highlighting that. And
Rochelle Lillian at the URA has been amazing. She's helped us.
Lillian and our lending officers, and I know Sienna and Carly, and of course we supported and purchased some of your food and catered events and things like this. So, you know, it's really worthwhile to get involved with your small business development centers and the resources in the city of Allegheny County and at the URA, and it can really help a small business going forward. Appreciate you, Rachel and Ivan, taking time.
One last thing. Just remember, the people working at city permitting and at the URA do not own restaurants. And I think that's one thing that makes it difficult for them to understand and be empathetic with each other. And I think that one thing we need to bridge is the gap between empathy between business owners and the people that hold the power or the bureaucracy, because we want to help each other. We're there for them. They're there.
Let's save that discussion for another day. We got a lot of hardworking folks over there, and I've been in that position myself, and it's really challenging with construction going on everywhere and trying to get these inspections scheduled and everything taken care of. But duly noted, and I really appreciate your candor and your time here and the motivation and sharing your story with us. So please stick around. I just want to move to the next one with Lori.
Thank you.
And move to commercial lending, and I appreciate the substantive content. Thank you so much. Lori Moran. Let's see if I can get back to Valley Money here, talking about a commercial realtor talking about leasing, and she's giving us some time in the middle of an event she's in. So Lori, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can. It's all good.
Okay, great. All right. The good news is I have not started drinking yet, so we should be okay.
Well, go ahead and have one. Don't worry about it.
It's actually not the good news for me. It's the good news for you. Rachel and Ivan, thank you for sharing. That's a terrific story. Thanks to the URA. They are amazing. We've worked with them for decades. I can't say enough. They do so much for small businesses and the communities. So thank you, Charles, and your whole staff. It's terrific. My name is Lori Moran. I'm with Valley Money Real Estate Services. We're a commercial real estate company that typically manages and owns shopping centers. I'm also involved with the East Liberty Chamber of Commerce, and I'm happy to answer any questions offline that anybody has regarding most things to do with real estate. So Charles, did you have something you were going to put up on the screen? Oh, there it is.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I can. Okay, so I'm going to go through 4 points very quickly, and then I'm going to go to the list that Charles has there. Buy or lease were the two the primary topic here, and there are 4 points I'd like to make. Number one, determine what type of business, what your business needs are. Are you a destination business where people will find you? You'll be on a back street, maybe you're in production or a wholesaler. Or do you need visibility and traffic, like a shopping center or an office building? So number one, determine what type of business, what kind of location your business needs. Number two, who's your target customer? You don't see Talbot going into the back streets of Etna, but you don't see an auto body shop going onto Walnut Street. So figure out who your clients are and where they live and travel and work and shop. Number three, the amount of build out that you need. Are you a restaurant where the majority of your build out is equipment that's going to stay in the space and really determine the value of that space and your inability to relocate easily? Or are you a clothing store where your fixtures can come with you? These are all things, whether you buy or lease, that I'm going through, and I'll tie it together in a minute. And if you're a production space, then you want back alley. You want cheap rent, back alley, put your money into your product and your employees. So those are kind of it's always best to buy with a few exceptions. One would be, actually, let me rephrase this. Typically, the reason people lease instead of buy is one, they can't afford to buy, or two, they need to be in a high traffic area like a shopping center or an office building, or three, their business plan just doesn't permit. It doesn't dictate the type of business they have to purchase. They have to be, it's a specialty business that can't be in a building where they own. So other than that, if you can buy. Now let me go through this lease also. Commercial mortgage. Typically these days, and I think somebody's speaking to the mortgage lending later, but I'll just say recently my experience, money is cheap right now, so it's much better to buy if you can, other than those instances I just talked about. Typically they want 55 to 60% loan to value sometimes. It used to be 75 to 80%. Now the banks are getting tougher. So you need a big chunk of money down. A commercial lease. With leasing, typically the way it goes, you find your building. You find a broker or they find you a building. You decide you want it. You negotiate the basic business terms. Your rent, which is the bulk of your costs, and then operating costs. So if your rent is $20 a square foot, your operating costs are probably $4 a square foot. And then the term of your lease. The term is very important. Try to get as much term as you can, as many options as you can. But your first term is maybe 3 years, 5 years. Don't go too long on your first term because you're committing to a lot of money. So maybe you want a 3-year lease. Maybe you want a 5-year lease. That's in your business plan. But what you do want are option periods. You can ask your landlord for additional periods of time that are your rent is determined and your timeline's determined, but you control them as a tenant. So if you have a 5-year lease, you can say, landlord, I want another 2 5-year options. So you have another 10 years. So you have value in that lease. That lease is valuable to your business, not only because you now know for 15 years what your rent is going to be, and you can plan on that. But if you have to sell your business, you have nothing to sell if you don't have term on your lease. So get as many options. So when your first 5 years is up, right before that, you can say to the landlord, I don't want to be here anymore. It's not working for me. Or I do want to stay. And then you decide to roll into your next option. That's really huge. Everything's negotiable, but typically in a startup business, I'll be frank, landlords are not thrilled about leasing to startup businesses because it's a risk. Restaurants are risk, startups are a risk. The best thing you can do, it's like when you go into a bank, you've got to sell the bank on your product, sell that landlord on you and your product. Have all your have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted. Sell them on your product. And if you do, that will go a long way. Another thing is, if the landlord doesn't have to spend a lot of money on the space to prepare it, they're going to be more apt to work with you. So if you go into a landlord and say, listen, I have the money to do it, and I'm going to fix the space up, you don't have to give me any money, they will be way more apt to lease to you as a startup business. Again, I did the timeline. So 3 years, 5 years, typically a landlord doesn't want to lease for less than 3 or 5 years for a base term. The letter of intent just covers your basic business terms, the dollar amounts and the terms, and who pays the utilities. The condition of the space and your build out are one of the biggest hidden costs. And I think that Ivan and that Rachel touched on that. It's not just how much it is per square foot. You can have, it's a focus. Everybody says, well, how much is it per square foot? The key is what condition is that space in when you take possession and what work needs to be done. That's enormous. If you can convince a landlord to give you some money to the build out, that's great. Use their money, but often they won't do it. So you have to be prepared. And before you sign that lease, get bids, get contractors in there. And that's a very reasonable request for the landlord. Get contractors in there to do exactly what you need. And something I didn't touch on because I was really focused on buying or leasing is know how much square feet you need. Before you even go looking, figure out how many square feet you need. And you could it's not rocket science. You can draw it out on a paper. If you can afford an architect, that's the best way to go. But figure out within, a reasonable number, how many square feet you need, because that's the first thing a landlord's going to ask is how many square feet do you need? And that's, if you don't know how many square feet, I can tell you right now, that landlord is not going to talk to you, because if you don't know what it tells me as a landlord, you don't know what you're talking about. So be prepared when you call them, because you got to sell them on yourself and your business. Does anybody have any questions?
Let me look at the chat real quick, Lori, and see if there's anything specifically for about leasing here.
Lori, I
can't
have
see.
a question.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Candy Green.
Hi.
So I'm kind of in this process. Well, I won't go, I won't talk your head off. I know you have to go. But so is it unusual for a landlord not to put any money on the TI of their building if it raises the capital of the building that they own?
No, that's not unusual because what you do inside your space typically is worthless to the landlord.
Okay.
If they do new HVAC system, that's valuable. And you bring up a good point in what you just said, because if the landlord may be inclined to do things that will stay with the building, maybe a new storefront, because it maybe needs it anyway, a new HVAC system, a new roof, things like
Right.
that will stay with the building. Everything else, and that's some of the first things tenants say. It's interesting. They say, well, I'm doing all this work in your building. Yeah, but when
Right.
you're gone, I'm going to gut that thing and somebody else is going to come in.
Mm.
For the most part.
Okay, and then what about whenever they want to build it out into your lease? So they're going to pay for the work, but they're putting it into your lease over the range of 3 years, 5 years. Yeah, and a lot of and in this situation in particular, it was a lot of things like adding a restroom because there wasn't a working restroom, or different things that it's not the pretty part of the building. It's things that are functional in the building. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's another thing. Restrooms would be another one I would add to roof or HVAC, because that adds value to the space that will stay with the space after you leave. So I'm thinking as landlord, what value can I keep in this space after this tenant goes under? I'm risking on a new startup, and what can I keep? So if I spend the money on that, that's okay, because it's going to be there and I can charge more rent if this person goes under. Not when, if. That was not a good choice of words.
And with those, so like the roof, restroom, things like that, should that be involved in your lease? So it's like, okay, this is, let's say it's $9 or $20 per square foot, but that's the starting cost. But because we did all this construction in the space, now it's $25 a square foot and things like that. Is that common? Is that something that?
They absolutely go together. You can choose, and this is often what I say to tenants, listen, do you want a lower rent and you do the build out?
Right.
Or do you want a higher rent and I'll do the build out? Because you're going to pay for it either way. The tenant will pay for it either way. It's just, well, I mean, if the landlord's willing to do it, that's great. But be prepared, and touching on something else that Rachel and Ivan said, it always takes longer and it always costs more. Almost every time that's the case. Find a very good architect right out of the gate who works for the city. They can submit these plans that once the city gets them, the city has what they need and they're done well, and they can estimate the cost properly. And you don't need big construction, big blown up construction plans to do these little build outs. And if you're not doing a ground up building, ask your architect for the minimum amount of permitting documents that you need to get your permits, because a contractor can build based on that.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Good questions.
Well, Lori, do you have any more for Lori? Just real quickly, we're going to have questions at the end as well, and you can certainly put them in the chat, but anything specifically for Lori? Okay, so let's move on. Lori, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time and being here and being available to the city of Pittsburgh for what we need to know about commercial lending. Thank you.
We appreciate you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're going to move now. Thank you very much to Bill Sperry with PLI. Let me advance my screen here. Here we go. And come out. Bill, are you with us there?
I am with us. It's good to be here tonight. Thank you, Charles.
Yeah, good to see you. Nice to see familiar faces.
Again, yeah, right. So it's good to be here tonight. So happy to talk a little bit about the permitting department. So my name is Bill Sperry. I'm on the inspection end of permits. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, a little bit about my department. We're broken up into a couple different sides. Some of you may have had some experience with us, maybe not. But just to start off real quick with a little information, the state of Pennsylvania has codes and requires and owner authorized agents who intend to construct, enlarge, alter, repair, move, demolish, or change the occupancy of a building, whether it's commercial or residential, install, enlarge, alter, repair, any electrical, gas, mechanical, or plumbing, any of these disciplines regulated by the UCC, which is the state of Pennsylvania, must first apply to the building code official and obtain the required permit under that law. So that brings us to the city of Pittsburgh and the Department of Permits, Licensing, and Inspections. We're big enough. We have our own department. If you were outside of Pittsburgh and maybe some, a smaller city or something, the building code official might be also the fire chief, and might have other jobs, and he's doing everything. He's doing permits, he's examining plans and things like that. But because we're a big municipality, we have staff that regulates this, and my boss is the building code official of the city of Pittsburgh. So it rolls up to him to regulate that. So that's where we get our marching orders from, as it were. And I certainly understand and sympathize. I want to share our mission statement, which is, our mission is to provide a better quality of living to the residents of the city of Pittsburgh by increasing safety in the built environment. So that's our stated goal, and I can say we've worked with some pretty great people here in the department, and our goal is, the same as yours. We want you to get your projects done, get your permits, but we also have to think about, the life of the building and the spaces you're occupying, and also the other residents in Pittsburgh. So that's where permitting comes in. So I can say I do believe in our mission. I'm in it. I think it matters. I think it's important. I think since these codes have been enforced and put into effect, we no longer lose city blocks to fire or entire neighborhoods because of one event, outside of something extraordinary like an act of God or an earthquake or something like that. But that's where these codes and these rules and regulations come from, and that's where we get our marching orders. So in PLI we have two branches. One does property maintenance, and that's based off of 311. Like if you're I don't know, if there's someone that's piling a bunch of junk cars in their front yard, they're not allowed to do that. There's rules against that. There's rules that govern that. So you can call 311 and we'll come out and take a look and try to compel them to comply with the stated rules that apply to everyone. That's one side, and that's one small example of what PLI does. Now on the other side of the wall, that's where we have permits. So as was stated before, I can't stress enough. If you can navigate through the permitting process by yourself, but if you don't have any experience, you're just by nature going to make a lot of mistakes, and it will delay the whole project. So I can't advise you whether or not to do that, but I can say, good design professional is invaluable in this. So whenever you want to, take on a project, well, and again, we're talking about starting small businesses, but from my point of view, it's whether you're building a deck on your house or changing, an interior environment of a building that used to be a house, and I want to have a restaurant in there. You can do that, but you have to apply for permits. And the way to then, once we're on the permitting side, again, then we have this first branch, as I just mentioned. It's going to be either a commercial or residential permit. That can confuse people because there may be times where a mixed occupancy, where you have a store or a restaurant on the first floor and apartments on the second. You might say, well, it's part residential, but that mixed occupancy requires commercial permitting or commercial regulation, and that has to do more with what code we would apply to that. Okay, so we've got several types of permits that are distinct from each other. As Ivan and Rachel were talking about, you have like a building permit, right? And some of this terminology may not be what you may find in common use. We have our own like code language, which again can be confusing unless you're familiar with it. So building permit is for your general construction work. A fire permit would be for different types of fire detection or suppression, like fire alarms, sprinkler systems, and things like that. Accessibility is not its own permit. It's included normally in the building permit or occupancy permit. Accessibility, again, is a term that is code language, but it really has to do with making it accessible for people with special needs, whether it be wheelchair, hearing impairment, sight impairment, that kind of thing. So accessible, again, the sort of loosely translated term is people call it ADA, but it's a requirement and it's a consideration that we have to account for when we're issuing permits. And this could be something as simple with accessibility, something like how big is your door, or how big is your restroom? If you're going to have guests in your restaurant, patrons, if they have special needs, they'll be able to use the restroom facilities. If you have a little tiny closet that you put a toilet in, it's not big enough, or that maybe that was there when they built the building in 1922, but it's not going to suffice now, especially after you're doing a fit out. Mechanical is actually the HVAC work, which is environmental air or any type of air. Now, where that again, where we consider that, you're taking, you're trying to bring environmental air for people to breathe and enjoy and be comfortable, and we're also trying to exhaust air that's been used that may or may not have been through a kitchen or be laden with grease. And that's all. We also live in a city, so that's got to exhaust. It's got to go somewhere. So oftentimes you'll see that we have, and I'll pepper this throughout the rest, are zoning requirements, which is a department that we work very closely with, but also different and distinct from us. But it's a concept, again, when we're removing that air, or whether it was used for appliances or the environment, it's going to go somewhere else, and it's going to go outside. So where we have to consider where that is going. Is it going to up and remove safely away, or is it going to go into the neighbor's window or make a lot of noise? That is also a trade license discipline, along with fire, where say building, you might have just a general contractor. Electrical, also a trade license, and again, you would need, you may or may not need all of these. Like if you're getting your building permit, typically you're going to need some other ones too, especially if you're fitting out a new area. Again, electrical, everybody's familiar with that. Again, the electric code is actually nested in the fire code, right? There's not just a simple electric code. It's an NFPA document, which is the fire code. So it's something we take for granted as very safe and is very reliable and works all the time. But just knowing that that's where that code is regulated and where they set standards for that is actually in the fire code. It's a powerful energy. And again, we're all very used to it, but it really takes a skilled professional with trade license credentials to work on those systems. Again, permit licensing inspections, PLI, we also regulate those licenses as well for the city of Pittsburgh. So just like driving a car, where you would need a license and insurance to work on some of these systems that would have a big impact on a building, whether it's life safety, fire suppression, accessibility, mechanical or electrical. We want to make sure that we have licensed professionals conducting that work. And then an occupancy permit. And this can be obtained naturally through the completion of your building permits. It can be a condition of it. We often organized like a group of permits as a project. So you would have a building permit would be called like the parent permit, with several sub permits with normally the trades nested under that. And upon the completion of all them, if you change the space, you would get, or you may get, a new certificate of occupancy, as was mentioned earlier. What that does is that gives you permission to move in and start using that space as you intended. So that's the intent of that. Often structures have an existing certificate of occupancy. Now, if you're going to change that, say it was a grocery store and you want to make it a restaurant, that's a change. So that triggers more robust code requirements, because the existing occupancy was to use that space in a particular way. So if you're going to change that, we have to make sure it's code compliant with today's standards. So that's a real quick jog over some permits, applications, pricing and drawing. So we have, since 2019, pulled everything to a single system, and the user portal is called One Stop. I would also say that PLI is in the pittsburghpa.gov website, and there's a ton of information there about who we are, how we operate, permits, their types, their inspection requirements, how to apply, contact information, all that is necessary. There's a ton of information. I refer to it myself often. But the One Stop is a separate website where people can, create a profile, log on, apply for permits. And as of now, since COVID, our physical office has been closed. The only way to apply for and submit drawings and pay fees and request inspections is through the One Stop portal. It was really timely. Our previous director launched the new system. Without it, we really would have been just about dead in the water, especially through COVID. So it was really providential that we had this launched and we were ready to go. And apart from the early days of COVID, we operated almost without a glitch. We went fully remote, and our review times and our numbers are better than when we had the desks open. We will eventually open up the office again, but for now, this is how it's done. So that's all done through the One Stop portal. Again, what we have for permits, again, there's levels of work. Let's say we call them work scopes. And we have three fundamental types, which would be minor alterations, which do not require drawings. You can do a lot of work with a minor alteration, but they don't require plans or drawings necessarily. But for the most part, they would not. That means you're not affecting anything structural with the building. So you're not gonna, you can do a lot of, you can remove like partition walls, exposed walls, re-insulate. But as soon as you start, adding like structural elements, changing the window size, we want to remove this front wall and put in a garage door for ease of access, or, we're going to take these stairs down and put them up. Then we want to understand how that's built and to make sure that it's structurally sound and it will work in the building. So in order to do that, we would require drawings, and those have to be prepared by a registered design professional. They can be really invaluable, and their role should be to listen to your vision and express it in the form of a drawings. And that's how that intention is communicated to us, in the form of an application and the drawings. That's the only way we can know what you're doing, right? That's the arrangement, because the state law says if you're going to alter, enlarge, or change a built environment, you have to apply for a permit. In order to get that permit, we want to understand what's going on. And that's how that's communicated to us, through your application and through the drawings. That's how we can understand. Once that application has been submitted, it's reviewed for code compliance. We want to make sure that it comports with existing and required codes that apply to that discipline or disciplines. And that's where it may go back and forth. There may be, if you have a really good design professional, it may go through with no problem. But if there's something that was omitted or missed, or could be inaccurate, we'll return that to say, all right, here's a couple items that we need to address. We want to understand how you're going to have, like I said, you're going to have an accessible route. How can somebody with a wheelchair go from the seating area to both exits in the event of a fire, or this space will require a sprinkler system now, and that's missing in the drawings. And your design professional will add that, and again, that would need its own set of permits. And once all that's approved, it's like, okay, now this project can proceed, and it cannot proceed before that. That's their statuses, and once a permit is issued, that's when work may begin. And if work begins before that, you don't really have approved drawings, and that's the circle you go there. So that's why work cannot commence until everything's been approved and then the permit's issued. Once that's issued, you have a plan, it's code compliant. That's when our inspectors come out and confirm that the project is being built in accordance with the plans that were provided and approved. Right? That's what the building inspector is doing, or the fire inspector, or the mechanical inspector. They're really just confirming that things are being built to what was described to us in the form of those drawings and those applications. And projects often run into, you encounter something you hadn't anticipated. We have a process for that, but generally that's the process there. So as the process goes on, and building inspectors have to inspect work before it's concealed. That's a it's a big headache for everybody if in an effort to try to hurry up and get things done, work that needed to be inspected gets concealed, walls get put up, and then we don't have a way of verifying what was in there. That can cause problems. So that's always important with inspections. Let us see it before it's concealed, and then you can proceed. Once the project is complete, final inspection's done, the permits are completed, and then they go through an audit from me. That's where I come in, and then my audit's successful, I'll send it to the building code official, my boss, and he issues the certificate of occupancy, if that was required, if that was a requirement of the permit. So I think
yeah, Bill, I think you've covered it there, unless there's something you wanted to add. I did want to ask one question for the sake of anyone thinking about pricing as it relates to permits. Do you have a general idea of the range of permits that on an average people have to take out when they come in, sign a lease and go through a build out, and just kind of on an average about what, 2 or 3 permits they're for sure going to probably need, and what the price range is for that permitting process?
So we have a fee schedule. Again, I'm a little downstream from fees. That happens at the application level, which I'm not heavily involved in. Our fee schedule and the way we post it is on our website. We're probably generally talking about commercial permits. That's my assumption.
Yeah,
you're gonna have a base. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, we have some base fees, but it's really just based off the value of construction. But I think the base fees for a commercial would be $550. There's amendment fees, and again, depending on how many times it goes through review, there's so that, I mean, if that puts you and again, I can't really comment on. I would say you're typically going to have minimally like a building permit and an electric permit for most projects. Commercial spaces, you're probably going to have, some sort of fire detection and suppression, which we would call life safety. And again, accessibility, if it's going to have, if you're going to have customers, the building permit itself would determine exit. So again, you'll have, probably a building permit and several, of the trade permits.
If you were just roughly guessing, would you say someone need to put in their budget $5,000 to get through, $2,000 to get through, or should they just actually go and look for sure?
I think I would say go and look for sure. That's
Ivan
again,
can probably speak to that too if they're going to be around in the end, but we'll wait till the end. We want Aaron to come on with the health department. Bill, I want to thank you very much for presentation. It was so helpful and informative, and it'll be here for people to look at in perpetuity as far as knowing how PLI works. And thank you for your time here. And if there are any questions at the end, if you're going to be around, Bill, people can ask them at the end. I want to make sure Aaron gets on and get Carly in here as well.
I'm on.
All right, Aaron, let me switch this screen here. Thanks, Bill. Okay, here we go. Thank you, Aaron. Aaron Burden of the Allegheny County Health Department.
Hello. My name is Aaron Burden with the Allegheny County Health Department. I'm one of the area supervisors. My main territory is from downtown to basically everything north of the point, to include the Strip District, Lawrenceville, and some of Bloomfield. Let's see. Can I share my slides?
Absolutely. Let's stop sharing here. Let me see. How am I
And
gonna-
before we get started, I'd like to really thank Rachel and Ivan for all the information that they provided. If you are listening to us, what they were saying was 100% accurate.
Yeah, Ivan and Rachel, we really do appreciate that. In the middle of your presentation, Aaron texted me and said, well, they pretty well covered my presentation. I'm gonna have to adjust and shift to something else. This is gonna be Aaron's pivot. So I'm gonna stop sharing, Aaron, and
Okay.
you're gonna be on. You can come in.
There we go. I am now sharing. And also, while everybody still has PLI still on their mind, there are some slight overlaps to where if you are submitting plans and specifications to the health department, they might require separate plans to be sent to the city. So let's say if your facility didn't have cooking equipment in it before, but you're adding a piece of equipment, and we say, hey, you need to have a ventilation system. Our regulation just says, hey, you need to have a ventilation system. It's the city that is actually going to dictate the specifics for that ventilation system. So a permit would have to be held through the city. Also, if you are submitting plans for a restaurant and you plan on having seats, we might tell you, hey, you need to install another bathroom. That might also trigger another permit or inspection by the city for their accessibility. So that that toilet room has to be at the proper size and specifications to meet their standards for the ADA. But I just wanted to mention that before I got too far off topic.
Yeah, well, I just want to add, it would make sense to me then to get Allegheny County Health Department in before PLI in case any of your recommendations trigger a permit that wasn't foreseen. Does that sound right to you?
And that might be beneficial, and sometimes it might delay. I really can't. It's really on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, well, we'll just leave that there. So carry on, Aaron. Thank you.
If I could weigh in,
Sure.
yeah, if you already know what building you're going to be working with, if you know how many seats, because that's what he said, depending on how many seats you have, might trigger another bathroom. All of those things are definitely valid and something you might want to take into consideration when starting a new business. If you're already looking for your storefront, know how big it's going to be, because that will absolutely trigger another thing, especially with the ADA.
Thank you very much, Rachel.
Yeah.
So even though Ivan did mention our website is packed full of information that might be difficult to find, it is true, but it is there for at least some good basic information. So you can actually go to achd.net/food safety. This is our old website address, but it still works. Or if you use Google, Bing, or any other search engine, I tested this out before. If you just search ACHD food safety, we're usually the first option right there. So you can find that information very quickly. One of the best things you can do is actually gathering the information before you actually go into the health department and say, hey, I want to start a food business. Gathering that information is vital. So this is our, I hate to say it, our basic plan review process. These are basically all the steps that are going to occur for a new business. On the next slide, I'll go through a slightly shorter version, but it starts where basically food business operator is going to gather all the information that they possibly can. This will greatly help and speed up on the process. The goal of the plan review process is to basically ensure that all the minimum standards are met in the facility. Once all the plans are once all the information is submitted, either your remodeling or your construction, it needs to happen before you need to submit the plans before you actually start remodeling. The food safety program will review the plan in order of being received. Typically, this takes 3 to 4 weeks. Since we don't front load anybody depending on size or how much money they're spending, it's just the first come, first served. We review on the plans, and then if they are found in compliance, we will send you a letter that says, hey, congratulations, you can start construction, remodeling, or doing whatever you have to do to build out your facility. If for some reason the plans are not found in compliance, there's 2 options. If it's a simple mistake, and the plan review person notices like, oh, this is just one little item they forgot, they will typically call or send an email to see if we can get that information very quickly so we can move on with compliance. If for some reason there's too many issues and it's not going to be handled just with a simple phone call or a simple email, then we'll actually send the non-compliance letter that will state every item that needs to be corrected. Typically, this is where a lot of the holdup can happen, where there's a mistake here, the plans get resubmitted, they're still not correct, or something else changes, and that 3 to 4 weeks can balloon very quickly to 6 months. So gathering that information beforehand is vital. But once construction begins, you've received your final plumbing inspections, all your permits from the city of Pittsburgh or whatever local municipality you are in. Then you can contact the health department. We will schedule a pre-operational inspection. We'll come out there, inspect your facility. And then the second we actually inspect your facility, you can actually begin operations. You will get your permit fee in approximately about 2 to 3 weeks. And then after the permit is paid, then you will receive your health permit. There is a slightly different process that is a more streamlined process. This is mainly for changes of ownership. So this is particularly for this food facility is already in operation. It's already been permitted. You're just taking over. You would just submit on the checklist to say, hey, I'm changing ownership. I'm taking over this new facility. I'm not changing this. I am going to replace this piece of equipment and that piece of equipment. It's mainly like a cooler or something that's not a pinnacle piece of equipment. And then typically that will take 1 to 2 weeks. The field staff will review it in consultation with the area supervisor. They'll schedule a pre-operational inspection, and the process is the same. But this is only for businesses that are currently operating or recently closed. I'll get into a little bit more detail. So for the change of ownership, the facility stays within the same general food establishment category as the previous permit. Basically, if it is a convenience store and you're buying this convenience store, but you're going to turn it into a full-scale restaurant, that's not going to be a change of ownership. That is not the same establishment category. That's going to be drastic changes that are required. If it's a change of ownership and it is not being majorly altered, so you're not going from, let's say, a facility that just made cold cut sandwiches to a facility that is actually baking, frying, and grilling food. You're going to need a lot of new equipment, new plumbing fixtures, so that would not really qualify for a change of ownership. And also, the facility has not been closed for an extensive renovation or other reason. Typically, we use a 6 months timeline here. If the facility has been closed for longer than 6 months, typically they will go through the complete plan review process, really just to make sure any out of date requirements that weren't there when the building or facility was initially permitted are all brought up to current code. One of the best ways to get to gather information is actually an inspection history of the facility, if it was a food facility prior to your purchasing this. You can also use this if you are interested in a facility and you want to get some good history information on it. On our website, it will let you know if this is a active client or if this is a inactive. The one I have highlighted here, it shows you that that facility was last inspected in 2018. So more than likely, this facility would have to go through a complete change of, or a complete plan review as a brand new facility. If you were to select one of the client names or the street, it will actually pull up the inspection record. On the inspection, you can actually look at the category code. That category code will tell you basically what type of facility was it prior to. Was it a restaurant? Was it a convenience store? Was this somebody who was just operating as a transient caterer? And some of this information might be helpful to you. And also, this allows you to prepare for when you actually have your conversation with the health department. And I will keep on harping on this, gathering that information before you actually come and ask us, like, okay, what do I need? Because our first question is going to be, well, what are you going to do? So you need to actually have a menu, knowing what you're actually going to make. Because we are going to actually look at, okay, these ingredients require this type of preparation step, which requires this type of equipment. That's why a complete menu is required. And also, depending on how many seats, how big your facility is going to be, how many people do you plan on serving in a day or in a week? How much food are you actually going to produce? That's going to affect your storage space. Dine-in versus takeout, that will affect the number of seats and customer toilet rooms, the amount that are needed there. I am going to share this presentation with the URA after this presentation. So all the links in here are good, but we do have the minimum requirements on the links here. So these are the items that will need to be submitted. The floor plan, which may not be required for a change of ownership. The plan review checklist, which we will show you that on the next page. A equipment list, menu, the plan review fee, and proof of tax use license issued by the PA Department of Revenue. This is a requirement throughout the state of Pennsylvania for any food facility prior to issuing a permit. This is the plan review checklist. There's a lot of information on here. It is intimidating to a lot of new facilities. The plan review specialists and field staff are more than happy to help people go through this process. One of the best things about it, or the most confusing thing, is applicants will look at the checklist and say, this doesn't apply to me, and they'll get hung up on it. If any section of this checklist is not applicable, it's very simply cross it out, right? Not applicable, and then just continue on. This is a general document that is used for most restaurants. The form we actually have here is for restaurants. There is a separate one for transient caterers and a separate one for mobile food facilities. But generally, all the same information is there. The plan review fee, the plan review fee is based off of the size and type of food facility. Generally, it is 50% of what your annual permit would be. For most food facilities, your plan review fee should be around $75 to possibly $100. But once again, that depends on the size and type of food facility. And the menu. Food processors and manufacturers must submit a preparation process flow information. So we actually know how this food is actually being produced, because if you are a processor or a food manufacturer, you might actually be wholesaling. So that increases the amount of people you're actually going to touch with your food. And so we need to look at that with a slightly finer tooth comb. The complete floor plan, labeling all the equipment and everything, drawn the scale, easy to read, and no digital blueprints. Some of our computer systems can't operate with some of the new digital blueprints that are provided. What is different between the city of Pittsburgh and what we need, your complete floor plan for us can actually be hand drawn. As long as it is neat and easy to read, it can be hand drawn. And believe me, my inspectors are very good at making do with little information that they can provide. So it doesn't need to be perfect. It don't have to get graphing paper and straight lines, just a good general floor plan. So we have a general idea of what we're actually looking at, what we are going to see inside of that food facility. And the equipment list with manufacturers' names and model numbers. Yonda, you turned on the TV. TV is way too loud right now.
That's all right. We can't hear it. It's all
You
good.
can't hear it. I can hear it in the background. I'm like, I tried to mute myself before. I'm like, man, I can't do it. All right. So after meeting the basic requirements and receiving a compliance letter, construction may begin. Once you receive the compliance letter, everything is really up to the food facility. As long as they give us a call 10 days prior to they plan on opening and operating, we will schedule an inspection and come right out, usually within a week. The 10 days is really just to give us some leeway so we can actually make scheduling for everybody, because if everybody requests a pre-operational inspection at once and everybody always wants it as soon as possible, sometimes we can't do that. So the 10 days gives us some type of leeway.
So Aaron, I'm
During
gonna,
the pre-operational inspection,
Aaron,
we
if
will
you don't- if you
verify the
don't
minimum
mind-
requirements according to the approved plan. Yes.
I was just gonna say, if you don't
Hello?
mind, we're gonna go a couple of minutes over just to make sure Carly can talk about the money piece. We're all interested in the money piece. But if you can
Oh
wrap
yeah.
it up here.
Actually, I think this is my last slide.
Okay, so sorry to interrupt you.
Yep,
Aaron,
that was my
but-
last slide.
My bad. Go
I was
ahead.
trying to. Yeah. During the pre-operational inspection, we're just going to verify that everything that you said in the plan is actually there and everything is operational. During the inspection, we'll complete the application for the actual health department or for the health permit. You'll sign another piece of paper. We'll do the inspection forms, and that will be it.
Aaron, I so appreciate your willingness to be here tonight and to give us this information and share your knowledge with us and how to progress through the Allegheny County Health Department and dealing with food service and Department of Health issues. And it's, again, very informative. And thank you for your time. Carly, I'm going to, and there'll be questions if you want to ask Aaron a little bit at the end after Carly speaks. So let me see, get back to my screen share. She doesn't really need it, but it might give her
It's a good
some,
guide.
some talking points to bounce off of. I think this is what I'm looking for.
So I'm gonna try to keep it 8 minutes or under. That's my personal challenge for the day or the evening, and then I'll go eat dinner. That'll be my reward. All this talk about food, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to eat. So while Charles gets the screen up, I just wanted to briefly introduce myself to the group. My name is Carly Turkley. I'm a senior lending analyst within our commercial and business lending department at the URA. I've been in this role for over 4.5 years, and I've worked with startup businesses as well as existing businesses in the city of Pittsburgh. I'm gonna also share, just for time's sake, I'm gonna share a bunch of links in the chat that I might touch upon or might be helpful resources for those who are interested in maybe learning, I don't like a certain location, is it in the city or not? Or certain lending resources like the Pittsburgh Business Lending Network. If you need any sort of credit counseling or assistance, there's what's called a financial empowerment center. That's also another link that's shared in the chat. For those who are probably watching this, maybe at a later time, this recording, it'd probably be best just to reach out to the URA directly if you're looking for more resources, just to kind of, so that way we can tailor your needs right then and there. So if you're listening to this at another time, reach out directly to the URA, the Commercial and Business Lending Department, and we'll definitely help you out. So I'm trying to stick to my 8-minute mark.
You can, you will only if you're trying to get to that dinner at a certain time, but we can just offer what you want to offer.
Okay, sounds good. And I did want to preface too, so we've been talking a lot about food-based businesses that are startup or existing, but just to kind of clear the air too, the URA also works with non-food based businesses or service providers that located in the city of Pittsburgh. So if you're opening or expanding a childcare business, or if you have kind of like a retail storefront concept, or if you are starting your own marketing firm, things like that. We've worked with a hodgepodge, so to speak, of for-profit entities. And like Charles mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, URA programs are only applicable within the city of Pittsburgh limits. We can't stress that enough. If you're looking to relocate in the city, say if you're outside the city in say Wilkinsburg and Keys Rocks, say Mount Lebanon, and you're looking to move your business or expand your business in the city of Pittsburgh, Charles Hudson and his team would be a great contact to start out with that and kind of go from there. From the lending side, I can kind of come into play later in the conversation, but to kind of kick that kind of expansion or relocating into the city, I think Charles and his team would be a really great first start. But let's get back on track with if you're thinking about moving into a storefront, we and on the lending side have a lot of different programs and at the URA that can help not only purchase a building, but also finance leasehold improvements if you are going that lease route. If you're looking to make some improvements to the space, whether it is cosmetic or something a little bit more hardcore, and you're changing some physical aspects of the flow of the building, or if you're building in a new kitchen, or commercial kitchen, for example, we've definitely financed for those kind of projects. So just letting you know that when it comes to what our loans can be used for, it can really be almost for anything. We do have, just to kind of keep it high level, we lend at a minimum of $5,000 up to $500,000. This is quite a range. Those dollar points or capital, as we say, points hit different programs at the URA or affiliate entities that work with the URA. But whenever you talk to myself or another loan officer, our job is to direct you to the right program to best suit your needs, whether it is for buying a building or purchasing equipment for your lease space in a business district, for example. And even before getting into kind of the space, so to speak, before you even approach a lender, you may know this or not, but some typical documents that are required for us and for other lenders out there in Pittsburgh. It's really important to have a business plan that captures basically your concept or the services or products that you will sell to your defined market and customers. And it's also, the plan is also a way to provide a detail into, who are your competitors? How are you going to be successful when you have these other competitors in the marketplace? What is your strategy in marketing? As me and Panada was saying, like, social media really made them look bigger than what they actually were. And that is really awesome. Like, they probably didn't have to invest a ton of money into that, but it was the perception from the market, from their customers, that me and Panada, like, their brand, their marketing, they look solid. I want to buy stuff from them because it looks like their stuff's really good. And it is. So just a little plug in for them. You're welcome. And so some other documents too that are really helpful outside of the business plan include projections. If you're a startup business and you're looking to start in a new retail space, projections are really going to be key to determine or be an organizing document to see, okay, this is how much money I plan to bring in from my products and or services. How much you'll also go through the expenses, and then also, at the bottom line, do I have any money left to pay, say, a lender like the URA? Do I have money to pay my loan back, which we will want to say yes, or like want to see that as a yes. And then after that, do you have any profit? Are you netting zero, or are you losing money? So projections are another key. If you're an existing business, lenders will also, including the URA, would want to see your historical financial statements. So your 2020 profit and loss statement, the balance sheet, your year to date, since we're kind of in the middle of 2021, your year to date, or like basically January up into like end of July 2021, year to date, like what did your performance look like then? It just gives us more information on the financial performance of your business and your model. I'm trying to think of anything else to share document wise. I think another good thing that maybe sometimes is not really obvious, when you're requesting capital, or you're asking for a certain dollar amount, say $50,000, you have to really drill down into that. What makes that $50,000? Is it all like leasehold improvements? If it is, you got to back that up. You have to show supporting documentation to legitimize that request, whether that is through quotes through your general contractors or the subcontractors on the job, equipment invoices or quotes from an equipment company, for example. If you have any questions around these kind of things or little nooks and crannies of the underwriting process, I'd be more than happy to walk through them with you. Sometimes it's basically, it can take on different shapes if you're a food-based business versus like a non-food-based business. So yeah, just wanted to throw that out there, like totally willing to have a conversation after this, because this is a lot of information. And it's kind of late at night too, so I'm sure everyone's kind of ready to get in their pajamas. So I will say that some of our programs too, if it's helpful to know, some of them are secured via a personal guarantee, and then others, depending on the loan amount, they'll be collateralized or secured through a lien on business assets or a lien on a personal or commercial property. So in the example in which the URA is lending dollars to someone who's looking to purchase a commercial property, we would be taking a lien position on the mortgage, whether it's first or second. And sometimes in projects too, because there could just be a lot of costs that need to be financed. There's also a chance that the URA cannot be the sole lender in a project. And so what that means is that oftentimes the entrepreneur or the business owners will have to engage with another lender. So that way, say, for example, Bridgeway Capital, like me and Panada worked with Bridgeway Capital and URA. So if, those two lenders can come to the table and work with a business owner to meet the goal of, say, buying a building to finance that, or even something smaller like purchasing a food truck and working together on that kind of a project. So it can kind of take on different shapes and forms, which is totally cool, makes it really zesty, and makes it for like a really interesting job, if I do say so myself. So hopefully in the chat, things are really, like those links I shared are really helpful. I did want to emphasize too, someone had asked about art galleries and boutiques. I just wanted to shout out to Austere, to Clay about putting out the Catapult program and the Gallery on Penn link in the chat. I will say, if that person is still online, the URA did finance the James Gallery in the West End many years ago, but that's an example in which I believe it was to purchase that real estate, to build it out and to get it kind of up to like operational specs. So that's an example. There's also Zinka Gallery in Sharpsburg, if that's something, that's outside the city, but I think that could be another model in which you can explore if that's like something, the route that you're going for. So I just wanted to call that out. I'm totally over 8 minutes. I'm so bummed about that. I tried, Charles.
It was well worth the expenditure of a couple of more minutes, Carly.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much information, and I think just I have more notes, but at the same time, in short, the URA is working remotely still for the most part. We do video meetings, phone meetings. If anyone has any questions or like wants to continue on this conversation, I'd be more than happy to work with you to schedule like a one-on-one time. Just getting something on the calendar, because I think really having a conversation and a detailed conversation is really going to be really helpful, not just for me, but also for you or the entrepreneur.
Carly, that was really fantastic, and I appreciate it. Your enthusiasm and passion for your work and for entrepreneurs and small businesses, contagious, and may we all turn it into success for ourselves. So I also, I'll put this last slide up. We also have some services at the URA that I will not go into. I want to have just a couple of minutes for Q&A, but if anybody's jumping off, I also want to plug me empanada, Rachel and Ivan. You haven't really had an empanada unless you have a me empanada, and it'll change your world, and you may never eat another after that unless it's me empanada. I love them. I bought a lot of them for URA events. Started going to URA events when if there were ever any there. If you were lucky at the end, you'd be able to take some home with you. So do get over there and try those out, and try those empanadas. They're unbelievable. The sauce is great. They're beautiful. Their ingredients are quite unique, and the quality they put into it is the quality you're going to receive. So it's fantastic. So let me just briefly mention, we covered financing a bit, but workforce development is another work that we're engaged in, and creating job boards and trying to match people looking for folks to work in their businesses, and create even some pipelines to grow our workforce development efforts, and with partnering with local organizations to help find people to work in their new businesses and startups. Avenues of Hope, I'm not going to mention about, but we're working in the 7 corridors. Astaire, would you like to say anything about some Main Street activity and the 7 corridors for Avenues of Hope, or should we leave that for another time? Something briefly.
Yeah, let's leave that for another time. I'll drop the link in the chat to the URA homepage about Avenues of Hope. It's a really big initiative, but essentially we are deploying quite a bit of ARP funding into 7 corridors throughout the city that are going to have some really unique and great programming available for entrepreneurs.
So for entrepreneurs looking for space and trying to start a business, there's going to be a lot of assistance if you're looking on the URA website and at the Avenues of Hope initiatives in the coming future. So there's a lot of programs that are going to be available to assist in that effort. And site location services, Claren Healy is here. Claren, I don't know if you want just a couple of minutes or drop anything in the chat specifically if you're still with us about.
Sure. I just wanted to mention, if you need any help locating a space, just give me a call. I'd be glad to work with you. It must be in the city of Pittsburgh though, but I try to match up any properties that I know of with, the vacant spaces with our URA clientele.
Thank you, Claren, and thank you, Carly and Astaire and Oscar for working the chat, and everybody that participated in trying to field questions and put in links. We're definitely gonna, and I want to thank our presenters, of course, Rachel and Ivan leading us off, and Lori Moran with Bally Money, me Empanada with Rachel and Ivan, but also Bill Sperry with Permits, License, and Inspection, and Aaron Burden with the Allegheny County Health Department, and Carly Turkley at the URA. So thank you for your time. I would just want to open it and see if there's any pressing questions someone would like to ask while we have everyone here.
We did have a couple of questions for the permitting department. One thing that you asked earlier was like, how much, did it cost for permitting? So for example, we have like a roughly 700 square foot space. Half of that is our kitchen, so it's very small. It's like a 1-car garage. So, I mean, I guess to kind of mention or touch on a couple of different things that Lori said as well. If you're looking for a space and you're in the city of Pittsburgh, these are all old buildings. There's going to be a lot of updates that are going to be needed. So one of the things that we encountered that kind of halted our construction was the ADA compliance. So what I have studied from other states is that it's a maximum of 20% of your construction costs have to go to ADA. For some reason in the city of Pittsburgh, it's a minimum of 20%. So, if your construction costs are $25,000, I mean, you're looking at $5K roughly or so in just ADA updates. So for us, it's again, a 700 square foot, we kept our restaurant under 10 seats. So we didn't have to add another bathroom because that's something that that the health department stated. And we found ourselves kind of just, stuck having to meet these expectations of ADA compliance when our building literally could not handle anymore. There was nothing to do. I mean, we made sure that the counter space was it, but I mean, it's 1 floor. We didn't have the bathroom open. If we did add more seats, we would have to cut into our kitchen and have this huge ramp. But basically, we kind of found ourselves having to inflate the price of our ADA job. We made sure the toilet was there. We add the railings and then the counter space. But honestly,
For a person that can't even get in there. You can
into the bathroom.
We had to do things for a wheelchair, which you should do to get into the shop. The counter is lower, but the bathroom's not public, and we were still forced to spend money that was completely unnecessary.
Or inflate the price just to get by.
That was one of the things that actually cost us thousands of dollars because we had to go redo permitting repeatedly until the ADA was satisfied. I will tell you right now, from working with other businesses, that it's the thing that hampers businesses from, keeping their budget in place or opening at all.
And like I said, I know a lot of these buildings are, old and they do need work, and we absolutely should make them accessible. But I guess I want to know, how is this being measured? Why is it a minimum of 20% to get this done? And because if you would have looked at our building, you would have seen that There just
It wasn't
isn't,
necessary.
there's not much more to do. You know, people can get in through the front door and they can order the empanadas, but you know, it delayed us opening by months. And if you don't know anything about us, we were supposed to open up July of last year, and we ended up opening the day everything shut down with COVID.
No, it will be the whole 2 years. So it would have been 2019. It was July 2019.
Whereas when
We ended up opening
March 2020.
2020.
So I guess, my question for Bill was kind of like, do we plan on changing that? Is there a reason?
Yeah, Rachel and Ivan, I think Bill had to move. He may have left his computer up, but he did have to move earlier. He texted me. But that's a really good question and something to be addressed. Some of those things can be stepped around for different reasons, in the way the code is written and the way it's enforced, and trying to hit the numbers and get them just right is a little bit of a Rubik's Cube and trying to figure out the algebra of it. But we'll leave that for another discussion more around
That's
policy.
fair. I mean, again, they're just some of the issues that we faced. If there's other people that are in this chat that are looking for those answers, please feel free to email us if you would like. I mean, even on our website, I'm the one who answers most of the emails. Anyone has any questions, I'm happy to discuss what it was like for us to open up. And the URA has also been very, very helpful as well.
Huge. We need more of that. We need more URA, and we need people to know where to find it. Like I said, the URA is there, and the people starting business don't know about the URA. They don't know about Bridgeway. They don't know even where to start. And we had people like Rochelle and other people in the URA that were tremendous in making sure that they gave us the resources. They told us where to go. They told us what to do. They had our back. They were almost part of the team. They were like partners in us in getting there. And I think that's very important, that businesses get more of that mentorship or one-on-one that will help them find the resources and materials. At the end of the day, they have to work, and you got to work hard. It is a business that requires a certain type of personality and a certain type of strength. It's not for everyone. Not everyone should own a business. Not everyone should do it. It's really, really difficult. It's extremely stressful, but there are little things that we can do with the resources that we have, especially if we want to make the city of Pittsburgh better and more accessible to smaller businesses.
That's a great point to end on, Ivan. I so appreciate it. Rachel, Ivan, thank you all so very much.
Thank you.
We've gone over because the content was extensive and wonderful, and I let it go on purpose. So thank you for sticking around, and I really do appreciate it. All our attendees and presenters, and do contact our loan officers. They have a wealth of information. They'll definitely be a partner, and they'll give you information and assistance that you don't even know you need at present. But thank you everyone for showing up. Look forward to working with you in the future, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Good night to you all.
Thanks, Charles, for leading us.
Oh, thank you.
Well done, everybody. Take care.
Night. Have a good night.
Thanks all.
Good job, everybody.